There are two main categories of farm costs. Firstly, the mainly one-off costs in setting up a farm. This includes the costs of obtaining a site licence and money invested in cages, moorings and boats, etc. Some of these items may have an expected life of 10 years or more, whereas others, such as nets, might require replacement after as little as 2 or 3 years. In accounting terms, these are fixed assets as their value normally extends well beyond the normal 1-year accounting period. This is the category of costs that we will deal with in this video. The second category is operating costs, which we will look at in the next video. Essentially, we are considering the costs that are incurred before the cages are actually stocked with fish. In addition to the cost of the cages and boats, it also includes other equipment required to operate the farm, including harvest boxes and safety and water quality monitoring equipment. There may also be one-off payments for services such as a site survey and cage installation. For financial appraisal, a common approach is an investment model using a discounted cash flow of farm operations following an initial investment. However, this spreadsheet uses a more basic approach as a quick indicator of potential profitability. This is to work out the annualised cost of the equipment and other setup costs and to include it in the annual budget as depreciation. The setup costs can be reached via the Farm Setups Cost button on the 0-Start Here sheet. The first table lists data that are used in later calculations. You are given a choice here to enter values directly into the table or to use default values, which in some cases you can indirectly edit. If you wish to use a mix of default and your own values, you must select your value and copy any default values you wish to use into the Your Value column. The Used column will confirm the data and the values used in the equations. Let's look at the default values in more detail. Most of these are based on formulas and lookup tables, which enables them to scale according to the size of the farm. For most of these, you can therefore make some adjustments without needing to switch to using your own value column. The default values for the cage collar, moorings and nets are taken from a further lookup table, which you can access via the Cage Cost Table button. This lists the cost of the collar, moorings and nets for a range of cage volumes in Kenyan shillings per cubic metre of cage volume. These values can be changed according to local price information. For reasons explained further in the manual, you can see that generally there is a reduction in the cost per cubic metre of cage volume as the cage size increases. These default values are not specific for steel or plastic cages, so will almost certainly need adjustment. As with other lookup tables, the cage volume data must be ordered from the lowest at the top to the highest at the bottom. The cost information for these cage elements, shown on the Farm Setup Costs page, is taken from this table by looking up the volume of the cages from the 0-Start Here page, reading the corresponding cost per cubic metre from the table, and multiplying that by the cage volume before returning that value to the Farm Setup Cost table. As with other lookup tables, when the specified cage volume is between two values in the table, data from the row with the lower value will be used. The next default value is the number of nets that would be purchased per cage, as it is common to have spare nets and nets of different mesh sizes. This is the odd number out as it does not depend on any scaling factors. For convenience, therefore, this default value can be edited directly. The next value is the number of staff for whom safety equipment such as life jackets need to be purchased. The default value shown here will be the same as the default value shown for the number of staff on the operating costs page, as they are based on the same calculation, linked to average daily feed amount. To change this value, see the next video on operating costs. If you use your own value in the operating cost table, You should also use your own value in the setup costs table. The other equipment category should include all other equipment needed for the cages, including feeders if used and water quality monitoring equipment. The default value here is 10% of the other major item costs shown in the second table on this sheet. This second table draws on values from the first table, but also lists further equipment and setup costs which you should adjust to suit actual values. Most important here are the costs for boats, outboard engines and diving equipment. If you have selected to use the default values for other equipment costs, but consider it to be too high or too low, you can adjust it in this table by changing the value in the number column. E.g. to increase by 10%, enter 1.1 as the number, or to decrease by 10%, enter 0.9 as the number for other equipment costs. There are also lines in this table for startup expenditure on services such as consultancy and training, and on regulatory expenditure such as surveys and licenses. To the right of these values are calculations for depreciation. The expected life of each item is specified in years. This allows an annualized cost of startup to be included in profitability calculations, i.e. depreciation. If you wish to assess financial viability over a shorter time frame than the actual life of the equipment, you can enter that shorter period in the life column. However, note that in some cases, equipment may then have a second-hand value, e.g. boats, which would not then be taken into account. You can also specify a percentage of setup costs as an annual maintenance cost, which is then included in the operating costs sheet. The final content on this page is a set of totals that are used in the 5- comparison sheet to provide a further indicator of financial viability. This table simply sums data from elsewhere on the sheet. In the next video, we look at setting up the regular operating costs in addition to the cost of fry and feed.